Here's a step-by-step tutorial of how to add back buttons to the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, just like the one you see right here. And to do it, I'm actually going to be using this ExtremeRate Rise Remap kit. Really easy to install, just a couple tricky parts, so make sure you pay attention. And if you guys want to pick one of these up, I'll leave a link in the description. Opening up the box, you will notice the kit does come with all the tools and hardware necessary to complete the installation. This is, of course, with the exception of the soldering iron, which is not necessary but used for optional functionality, which I'll touch more on a little bit later. Step 1, grab your Pro controller and turn it upside down. You will see 2 screws. There will be 1 screw located on the bottom of each handle. Unscrew those and pull the handle straight off. A pro tip for you, be sure to group all controller pieces and hardware together in sections. This will make it much easier when you have to reassemble everything at the end. Once you remove those handles, you're going to notice 4 additional screws. Go ahead and unscrew those now. Next up, pry the back of the controller shell along the bottom edge. Be mindful that you don't want to pry too hard, as you can damage the controller internals. The back controller shell should just pop off pretty easy. Go ahead and just put that off to the side. Next up, you're going to want to remove 5 more screws and then the controller battery. Go ahead and group these all together and place them off to the side. You will now be able to separate the 2 halves of the controller. Just be mindful that there is a ribbon cable connecting these, so you're going to want to be kind of gentle when you do this. Go ahead and remove that ribbon cable by lifting up on the black plastic clamp and then pulling gently on the cable. On the front half of the controller, you're going to need to remove 4 additional screws. Go ahead and put those screws off to the side and then remove the original PCBA and swap it with the new one that is provided in the kit. In order to do this, you're going to need to remove another ribbon cable. This works the same way as last time. Just lift up on the plastic clamps and pull gently on the cable. And then you'll be all good to remove the PCB board. You should now have a shell of a controller. Go ahead and grab the new PCB board and place it in where the existing board was located before. After that, grab the trigger insert and place it on top of the PCB board. Once that's completed, open the ribbon cable latch gently and insert the ribbon cable. Once done, be sure to close the latch and lock it in. Grab those 4 screws from earlier, screw them back in to secure down the PCB board. So here comes that optional part that I mentioned in the beginning of the video. One awesome feature that the kit provides is the ability to remap the L3 and R3 to the back buttons. However, this feature does require a few extra steps, including the use of a soldering iron to achieve this. So if you don't care about remapping the L3 and R3 buttons, you can just go ahead and skip ahead past this part of the video. Grab the back half of the controller. There will be 6 screws that you need to remove from the board. Once done, slide the white piece of plastic up and away from the board. This should completely free up the rest of the internals, so you can go ahead and flip them out now. At this point, grab your soldering iron and keep it between 350 and 400 degrees Celsius. Next up, let's identify the solder joints that you're going to need to heat up. Those 2 will be located right here. Start out by heating those joints up. Just tap them a few times to finish up the soldering. You'll notice that the kit does include 2 red cables that will need to be soldered onto the previous identified joints. And once you've got those 2 red cables connected to the board, grab the 2 pieces of insulation tape that are provided with the kit. I would recommend that you cut them into smaller pieces so you can use them for a bit of cable management and also cable identification. Speaking of cable identification, a pro tip for you is to use an extra piece of tape around one of the cables. I used mine on R3. This way you can identify which one is which later on in the installation. Now it's time to put the PCB board back in the controller, making sure that we're gentle with our newly soldered cables. We don't want to press or crimp them in any way because we don't want them to be damaged. Remember that white piece of plastic from earlier? Grab it and go ahead and slide it back down into place. This is going to secure the board down while you grab the 6 screws and go ahead and lock that board back down into the frame. Next up, grab the small remapping board right here. Now this part's really important, so you're going to want to listen to this. If you have chosen to do the optional soldering, flip the small black switch on the bottom of this board all the way to the left before you solder the red cables onto it. If you have chosen to skip the optional soldering, make sure to flip the small black switch all the way to the right before you proceed. Failing to follow these instructions could lead to malfunctions once your installation is complete. With that black switch flipped all the way to the left, grab your soldering iron iron and go ahead and heat the solder joints a few times. These will be labeled with an R3 and L3. Just be careful when you're doing this. Don't heat them up for too long because this can damage the components. Remember that piece of tape we used to identify between the two cables earlier? This is where that's going to come in handy. Grab your two red cables and solder them onto each corresponding joint. Next up, we're going to grab the frame for the back buttons because it's time to put these together. Grab the large outer rocker style back button and go ahead and press it into place. There will be two screw holes for you to secure down this attachment. Go ahead and use the orange screwdriver and screw those two included screws in now. Once you finish that, grab the two middle buttons, press those into place, and then these ones are actually going to have 4 screws each, so it's going to be 8 screws total for these buttons. Don't forget about the oval center button cap that you're going to need to slide into the center of the back button attachment. You can use a couple small pieces of tape to just secure this down into place for now while you're completing the rest of the installation. Up next, go ahead and grab the rest of the rear controller shell that is included in the kit and place the back button attachment together with the shell. There will be 4 screws that you need to in order to secure the back button attachment onto the new controller shell. At this point, you're going to need to grab the remapping board from earlier. If you did the optional soldering, this is going to be already attached to your controller. If you did not do the optional soldering, it's going to be this small board right here. For those of you that did skip ahead in the video and did not do the optional portion, you're going to need to make sure of this very important note. Flip the small black switch all the way to the right before you complete the next portion of this installation, because failing to do so will result in controller malfunction once the installation is complete. So this step is very important. A gentle reminder for those of you who did do the optional soldering, leave that switch all the way to the left before continuing. Now place the small button remapping board into the back button attachment and use 4 included screws to anchor this into place. There will be a ribbon cable which is attached to the controller board. Go ahead and flip up the plastic clamps and remove that now. Remember not to use too much force when dealing with ribbon cables. These can be easily damaged or even tear. The kit does come with 2 brand new ribbon cables that you'll want to grab right now. Insert one of them blue side up into the cable lock that you just removed the existing cable from. Attach the other end of that cable blue side up into the back button remapping board. The cable will need to twist and rotate, which is okay. Grab the second ribbon cable and attach it blue side up into the second cable clamp on the back button attachment, as well as the front side of the controller board. Again, the cable will need to flip over, which is necessary to complete the installation properly. At this point, grab both the front and the back of the controller, place them together, threading the joysticks through the front holes. While you're doing this, it's important to be mindful of the ribbon cables and the red soldered cables, because if you crimp or clamp them down, you could damage them, so make sure you just take your time with this part. Grab 5 screws from earlier and reconnect the 2 controller pieces together. Now it's time to insert the controller battery. It never hurts to do a little extra cable management to make sure things stay neat and clean. Then grab the new back button plate and place it over the rear of the controller. There will be 4 screws which are needed to be secured down. Once done, grab the controller handle grips and slide them back into place. Finally, the 2 screws that we started with are on the bottom of each controller handle. If done right, each button should be clicky and responsive. And to remap your controller, press the middle setting button down for 5 seconds until the red indicator light turns on and stays on. The red indicator light will be on the home button on the face of the controller. Now that your controller is in remapping mode, simply press down one of the back buttons that you want to remap, followed by pressing any button on the controller. You're going to want to hold both buttons down for approximately 3 seconds, and when you've done it correctly, the red light will blink 1 time. Simply repeat this process for each of the back buttons and you're all done. And just like that, that's going to wrap up today's video of adding back buttons to our Nintendo Switch Pro controller. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure you hit the subscribe button and go check out some of my other videos. See you on the next one.